This week, the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals in their first primetime football game of the year, with Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback on Thursday Night Football. Today, we're going to be previewing this matchup, keys to victory. We'll go over the Bengals roster and their scheme, go over some of the injuries to watch. We got all that information coming up here on this week's Steelers Talk Preview. But before we get into the content today, guys, make sure you click that subscribe button, because on Thursday, we'll be going live for yet another Steelers Talk live watch party. This year, it all starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, over an hour of pregame coverage for you guys, followed by live play-by-play and live reaction and analysis to the game itself, and then we'll have our extensive post-game coverage as well. Hopefully, the Steelers are going to be able to get this win here and improve to 5-1. And make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss any of our videos this year and any of our live shows. We're going live actually later today at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course, we'll be live for every single Steelers game this year. We put out usually 2 videos a day on the Pittsburgh Steelers on this channel. So if you guys want the most extensive Steelers coverage anywhere here on the YouTube platform, join the over 100,000 subscribers. Already joined the Steelers Talk family by clicking that subscribe button right now. All right, so now let's get into this one, man. Thursday Night Football in Cincinnati this week. The 4-1 Pittsburgh Steelers, fresh off their win versus the Cleveland Browns at home in Week 6, going up against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, coming off of 4 straight losses and coming off a loss to Green Bay last Sunday. Now, something that, is something to keep a note of here, okay? Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers have not been very good in the Tomlin era on the road on Thursday night, all right? It's just not been something that they've done particularly well, and in fact, they're 0-6 in the Tomlin era here when they're playing divisional opponents on Thursday Night Football on the road. So certainly the historical precedent here would say that the Steelers are at a disadvantage here, but as you'll see over the course of this video, I think at least on paper, the Pittsburgh Steelers certainly have the advantage heading into this ball game, but that is something to keep in mind here, because I know a lot of people are looking for that quote-unquote classic Tomlin game where you're supposed to win, but you end up losing. I would say if that's going to happen, there's a somewhat decent chance that that could happen this week. And now you take a look at some of the injuries here, guys, that the Bengals are dealing with. Mike Gesicki had a pectoral injury this past week. He will be out for this ball game. Joe Burrow still dealing with his turf toe. He will not be available for this game either. Lucas Patrick and Cordell Volson, a pair of guards for them, will also not be available for this football game. So their offensive line is kind of in shambles at this point, especially on the interior. Then 2 guys with injuries to watch that I would say this week, guys. Calvin Austin III still dealing with that shoulder injury. I would guess he doesn't play this week, but Mike Tomlin did keep the door open for him to play on Thursday night, so keep your eye on injury statuses for him. And then Trey Hendrickson is dealing with a hip injury that he suffered versus Green Bay on Sunday. Now, Zach Taylor did say that he has a chance to play, so we'll see what his participation looks like in practice this week and if he's going to be able to give it a go. I'll say this, though, guys. If Trey Hendrickson can't go for the Cincinnati Bengals, that defensive roster is really down bad if they're not going to have Trey Hendrickson, their superstar edge rusher, getting after Aaron Rodgers. So now you take a look here at the Cincinnati Bengals coaching staff and kind of the schemes that they like to run on either side of the ball. Head coach Zach Taylor definitely on the hot seat in Cincinnati here. Another kind of slow start. I know that Joe Burrow hasn't been out there for the last 4 games, but he's got a career record of 48, 56-1, so a losing career record, even with Joe Burrow being there for most of the time. He still calls the offensive plays there in Cincinnati. They run kind of really a vanilla offense, in my opinion, according to NFL standards today. It's a lot of spread. It's a lot of, kind of basic concepts that, from those shotgun spread formations, nothing that Joe Flacco can't necessarily run. And honestly, for a quarterback that has to play 2 games in the span of 8 days since he's been traded to the Cincinnati Bengals, this is the type of offense that a guy like Flacco can probably pick up relatively quickly. But on the defensive side of the ball, their new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, coming over from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He runs a base nickel defense with 2 high safeties. It plays a lot of man coverage, and honestly, it's not been very good for the Cincinnati Bengals on the defensive side of the ball to start this season. You guys can see the results here for Cincinnati. They beat Cleveland on the road barely in Week 1. That was with Joe Burrow. And then they beat Jacksonville, putting up 31 points against them in week 2, but then, Joe Burrow gets hurt, and he's going to be out for the next couple months still, and you lose 4 straight games. They get blown out versus Minnesota on the road in Carson Wentz. They get blown out by Bo Nix and the Broncos in week 4. Then they get blown out against Detroit in week 5, and then you lose by multiple scores again to the Green Bay Packers, even though they were slightly more competitive with Joe Flacco last week at Lambeau than they were in the previous 3 weeks with Jake Browning. I don't think anybody is claiming that the Cincinnati Bengals are a good football team at this point in the season, currently sitting at 2-4, which is crazy because they're still second in the AFC North. All right, that just tells you how bad the AFC North has been to this point in the season. But now we can shift our focus here to the Bengals roster. Joe Flacco is their starting quarterback this week. Zeus Brown is their starting left tackle. I would say he's by far their best offensive lineman, and even he hasn't been fantastic this year. But they got Dalton Reisner to play left guard after the injuries that they have suffered at the guard position. He's fine. Ted Karras is a decent starting center. But then they got Jalen Rivers as their starting right guard. He frickin' stinks. He's a really young guy. Not a lot of experience. That's certainly a position that the Steelers can exploit this week. And same thing goes for Amarius Mims, who's a young player, former first-round pick. Steelers were very interested in him in the draft a couple years ago, and he hasn't been fantastic to start his NFL career. But then really where this offense gets its notoriety is its weapons, right? You got Jamar Chase, maybe the best receiver in football, as their number 1 receiver. He's unbelievable. Then T. Higgins as the number 2 receiver, maybe the best number 2 receiver in the game. Long, really, really good, physical wide receiver that can win at the catch point down the field, back shoulder balls, all that stuff. And then their number 3 receiver is actually really underrated in my opinion, guys. Andre Yoshivas is a pretty darn good player. That can hurt you if you don't put attention on him. Drew Sample will be their starting tight end this week with Gesicki out, and Chase Brown is their starting running back. Chase Brown had a pretty decent 2 games against the Steelers last season. But you go to the defensive side of the ball. We'll see if Trey Hendrickson can play. I'm going to assume that he does for now, but we'll see. B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton are the 2 interior guys, not the best group of interior defensive linemen. Then Joseph Asai is just okay on the other edge position there. But Miles Murphy will be the guy that rotates in on the defensive end position there, and he will start this football game if Trey Hendrickson is unable to go. And then Chris Jenkins Jr., a pretty high draft pick that they spent out of Michigan a couple years ago, rotates in at defensive tackle as well. Now, they have kind of a rotation of off-ball linebackers, guys, but honestly, none of them are very good. Logan Wilson, formerly a good player, he frickin' stinks. I was really surprised watching the Bengals film this week how bad Wilson has been this year. And then Demetrius Knight has been just as bad. He's their other starter. But the thing is, their rotation and depth pieces are not any better. Oren Burks and Barrett Carter have gotten some time, but neither one of those guys have impressed me on film, going over their film this week. And, this is a big problem area for the Cincinnati Bengals defense. When you combine an interior of the defensive line that's pretty squishy along with a second-level defensive group that's not very good, you can definitely run the football on the Cincinnati Bengals. And you look at the secondary, it's not like it's a fantastic secondary either. Like, you got DJ Turner as your number 1 corner, one of the worst number 1 corners in the league. He's got speed, but he's not fantastic. Then Cam Taylor-Britt is kind of their bigger, longer, physical corner on the outside. He'll probably be going up against DK Metcalf. Then you got Geno Stone and Jordan Battle, decent safety too, I guess, but they're not very, very good. Then you got Dax Hill as their starting slot corner. He's probably their best cornerback on the team. All right, Dax Hill is actually a pretty decent nickel corner. So I think if the Steelers want to kind of exploit some matchups here, they can exploit the outside with DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt. Now, still to come here on the Steelers Talk Preview for Week 7 for Thursday Night Football. Keys to victory versus the Bengals. I got my scouting report on Joe Flacco, and then we'll get into my score prediction here for this Week 7 matchup. But before we get into the rest of this week's preview, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Mando Whole Body Deodorant. And guys, fall is officially here, and that means crisp air, that means football, maybe a bonfire or two, but if you're like most guys, you're still putting in a lot of hard work. And yeah, that means sweat. Don't let body odor sideline you. Mando Hub Deodorant Plus Sweat Control is for real working guys, formulated to stop odor before it starts and doesn't mask odor with overwhelming fragrance. so you can tackle anything from the job site to tailgating with confidence. This isn't your typical deodorant, guys. It's clinical strength, 2 times better at controlling sweat than the standard deodorant. It controls both sweat and odor for 72 hours. And after just 12 hours, underarm sweat was reduced by 92%. This stuff really works, which is why I've actually brought my own stick of Mando a deodorant, guys, because I really do use this product and I really do love it. It keeps me smelling fresh and clean for up to 72 hours, and I really love the bourbon leather scent. Not only do I have the deodorant in there, bourbon leather scent, but I also have a full bottle of body wash that I use every single day in the shower, guys, and I just think that it's a really pleasant scent to be smelling on yourself all day long, and it also keeps you smelling fresh, and it keeps you dry as well, which is really, really great. So Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers because it comes with a solid stick of deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice. You can get mini body wash, or their deodorant wipes are very highly recommended as well. Plus, you get free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners only, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code CHAT at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide. Plus, you get free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness with our friends at Mando Whole Body Deodorant today. The first key to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday Night Football is to get after the statue in the pocket that is Joe Flacco. All right, people want to talk about Aaron Rodgers not being able to move anymore. At least Rodgers has some good pocket presence to feel pressure, step up in the pocket, step to the side, buy himself an extra second so he can get rid of the football. Joe Flacco just stands in the pocket. All right, that's all he does, and he can't move. So if the Steelers can do what they've done against the Vikings and the Browns the last 2 weeks and get after the quarterback quickly, I think last week versus the Browns, 20 of their 25 pressures came within 2.5 seconds of the drop back. So the Steelers pass rush is getting after teams, especially with bad O-lines. And guess who has a bad O-line? That would be the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think Flacco is still going to be very limited. Now, it's not like the Bengals offense, like I mentioned earlier, is like the most complex offense in the world. Like, he's going to be able to pick it up relatively well. And, they're going to run a lot of basic concepts. They're going to run a lot of stick. They're going to run a lot of dragon. They're going to run a lot of stuff that Joe Flacco has run throughout his career and can easily implement in this Thursday night matchup. But the Steelers need to be ready for that, okay? Because Joe Flacco, he can still throw the ball. Even at his age, he still has his arm strength. He can still sling that thing. And he does have good deep ball touch. So, like, on those deep balls to T. Higgins, on those deep balls to Jamar Chase, if you let those guys have one-on-one opportunities, Flacco is going to rip it down the field. He does have decent mental processing. He can go through a full field progression read. He's been a pro in this league for a long time, and he can throw with anticipation at times. But the cons, no mobility whatsoever, which means pretty much no out-of-structure playmaking. He needs to win from within structure in order to have a good day at the office. Also, he throws a lot of turnover-worthy plays. Like, he's kind of at the point in his career where he's like, I've already won a Super Bowl. I've already done a lot of things. I made a lot of the money that I want to make in my career. I'm just going to go out and play free, right? So he's going to throw the ball into tight windows, and there's going to be opportunities to get interceptions for the Steelers in this football game, especially if you can force third and long situations and start creating a little bit of that desperation in the mind of Joe Flacco. He's certainly somebody that will put the ball in harm's way if you can put pressure on him and if you instill a little bit of that desperation. I ranked him as the 30th best quarterback in football heading into the year. I think that's probably around right at this point in time. So definitely, you're looking at Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith. I think Derek Harmon could have a really big impact in this game. Same thing with Keanu Benton going up against that rookie right guard that they have this week. Also, I think that TJ Watt could really take advantage of his matchup with Amarius Mims. So I think that there's certainly going to be opportunities to get after Joe Flacco, and if the Steelers can do that and take away Flacco's first read, I think it should be a pretty fruitful day for the Steelers defense yet again. And, I think a way that you can really do that is lean a little bit more into cover 2 man. And, because the Steelers don't have a mobile quarterback, we've seen a lot of teams play cover 2 man against the Steelers, but there's not a whole lot of quarterbacks and offenses in this league where you feel comfortable playing a lot of what I'm used to referring to as cover 5. Most people that play Madden would know this as cover 2 man, where you got the 2 deep safeties, and then you've got man-to-man coverage, usually with press coverage across the board. And, the Steelers play a lot of man coverage, but, they've played a lot of guys that can beat you with their legs. Guys like Drake May and guys like Justin Fields and, Sam Darnold can even beat you with his legs at times. So they haven't been playing a lot of cover 2-man. But, there's certain benefits to playing 2-man versus one high man. Number one, it protects from deep shots down the field. So Joe Flacco wants to throw those deep shots to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Having two deep safeties prevents those 20-plus yard air yard type of throws, those true deep shots down the field. And then also it frees up your DB group to play really aggressively with press coverage and try to jam T. Higgins and jam Jamar Chase, not let those guys get free releases and make life hard for those guys. And also, if you're jamming at the line of scrimmage, you're playing aggressively in the secondary, that could buy just that extra second of time for the pass rush to get home and get Joe Flacco on the ground. And the weakness of cover 2-man, guys, is that, if you have a rushing quarterback, there's nobody accounting for the QB in the run game. So if you have a good QB that can run the football, you can really gash a team that plays 2-man. But because Joe Flacco is a pretty much non-factor in that regard, the Steelers should feel more free to play more cover 2-man than they have really at any point during the 2025 season to this point in the year. But then, I think what you do with Jamar Chase, there's going to be a debate as to who should Jalen Ramsey cover and who should Joey Porter Jr. cover and who should Darius Slay cover. For me, what I'm doing is I'm putting Joey Porter Jr., who's got the really long arms, he's got experience playing against T. Higgins, to put him on T. Because, if you put, I'm not saying, Jalen Ramsey or Darius Slay are small guys by any stretch of the imagination, but I think in terms of the physical body type that can match up with a T. Higgins the best, I think Joey Porter Jr. Fits that bill. And then when it comes to Jalen Ramsey, he's been going up against number one receivers like Jamar Chase his entire NFL career. And you get a guy like Jalen Ramsey specifically to guard guys like Jamar Chase. Now, Mike Tomlin has said it himself that one of the reasons why they wanted to go out and get a Jalen Ramsey this offseason is specifically because they wanted to match up with teams like the Cincinnati Bengals and the weapons that they have at the receiver position. So that tells me that Ramsey will probably get this matchup, and I think that's a good thing. And especially if you have that safety help over the top to kind of prevent any big plays down the field, I think Ramsey could have a very good day going up against one of the best receivers in the National Football League on Thursday night. Now, moving on to the offensive side of the ball here, guys, I think the main thing needs to continue to be the main thing with the Steelers offense, which is the run game, all right? Run it down their freaking throats, all right? If Cincinnati wants to come out in nickel versus the Steelers' jumbo personnel packages, I mean, I'm not even joking, man. Like, this could be one of the best games of Jaylen Warren's career because this run defense and this just defense in general is about as soft as it gets. They play a lot of nickel and they play a lot of two high safeties. I don't necessarily think they're going to be able to do that for very long if they don't want to just get absolutely destroyed in this game, because Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington versus this defensive front, it just wouldn't be fair if they play the game that way. So I do think Cincinnati will probably play a little bit heavier than they're used to. They'll play more one high safety stuff than they're used to, which puts them in a position where they're not used to playing that way, and that's certainly an advantage for the Steelers. But no matter what, man, I think that Jaylen Warren can have one of the best games of his career. I mean, like, you look at the advantage that the Steelers have, or that they should have at the line of scrimmage, mixed with the fact that Jaylen Warren can make guys miss out in space. Like, it really wouldn't surprise me, guys, if he easily gets over 100 yards rushing and at least 100-plus yards from scrimmage. I mean, that's not even counting what he can do as a receiver. So I think, if you have Jaylen Warren on your fantasy team, you definitely want to start him for Thursday night. I think it could be a big game for number 30. But then also, I would say give your studs yards run after the catch opportunities. Okay, continue to get Aaron Rodgers the ball out of his hands quickly. Get the ball out to DK Metcalf, because plain simply, man, Cincinnati's defense really struggles to tackle. So, if you can get the ball out in space to your playmakers, all right? I'm talking about DK Metcalf, who's one of the best, if not the best, run-after-catch receiver in the game right now. Jonnu Smith, your designated touch guy at tight end. Jaylen Warren, Kenny Gainwell, all right? These guys that can make guys miss out in space, that are really good yak threats. I think that, once again, that will be a big part of the game plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, kind of like Jaylen Warren, I kind of expect DK Metcalf to have a big game with Cam Taylor-Britt slated to go up against him. And then the final key to victory here for me, guys, is to play the cleaner game. And whenever, you have a big talent disparity between the rosters that are playing in a certain football game. I think that this is particularly important. You know, the way that you allow inferior opponents to stay in games against you is you commit a lot of penalties, you commit a lot of turnovers, you make stupid mistakes. And, you know, the one game that the Steelers lost this year was to the Seattle Seahawks, and it was because of what? Stupid mistakes, kind of outlier mistakes that allowed the Seattle Seahawks to pull away in the second half, all right? If you allow those same mistakes in this ball game, the Bengals might have a chance in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, guys, the Steelers have been playing really clean, really good football, and I don't see any reason to think that it's going to stop. I know it's a divisional game, all that stuff, but I just don't think Joe Flacco is going to be able to handle the pass rush that the Steelers are going to be able to throw at him. I think that the Steelers will continue to be efficient in the red zone in this game. I think Jalen Warren will be running all over that defense. I'm going to go 31-10. Steelers win on Thursday night, and they improve to 5-1. Heading into a mini bye week, getting ready for the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. So it's your turn. Let me know down there in the comment section. Predict the score of Steelers versus Bengals for me down there in the comment section. I've got 31-10 Pittsburgh. Convincing fashion win, 3-touchdown deficit for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Make sure you guys click that, or make sure you get your score predictions down there in the comment section. Again, we're going to have previews on this channel for every single Steelers game every single week. We'll also have watch parties every time the Steelers have a football game this year, and of course post-game reactions as well. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Join us on Thursday for our live watch party starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.